The hall was empty. It was owned by RBS, the bank, the People's Bank, supposedly. And we were trying to raise money to buy the hall and make it into a community facility. We did brilliantly in the 18 months that we had to meet various deadlines, so they couldn't sell the hall to anyone else, and we could get a big bid into the Heritage Lottery. They didn't give us any money because they said we hadn't been going for long enough, and they didn't like the site. Not much to do about that. Anyway, so we had to tell RBS that we couldn't buy the hall. Well, luckily, later that year, so now we're talking about 2015, I think, maybe 14, the hall was bought and is now a health education centre for the South Asian community. It's a charity that's running it, so it's still a community facility. Unfortunately, it still has the lovely, beautiful Walden House plonked right in front of it. They've just recently applied for planning permission to turn Walden House into flats, and in the Civic Society we asked them, well, at least take off that ground floor bit that's on the other side of Walden House so you could see Hough End Hall, just because they thought they'd get another flat out of that. But what we then did, we worked with Friends of Chorlton Park to get their agreement that we could have some information boards about the hall. In between time, we wrote a book about the hall. If you haven't seen it, the stories in there.
£5
Story of Hough
copy.
End Hall. So
Third the price now, third the price.
Andrew's great work about the history of Hough End Hall and the people that live in it, and Peter's paintings and photographs about the hall. We produced a jigsaw.
£5 for the jigsaw, not down price.
How much for you, Peter?
Of events and so on. So we were raising awareness of the hall. But this is the next stage. So this is some 3 interpretation boards in the hall, in the park, sorry. This one, and then there's 2 on the driveway between Nell Lane and Malden Road. So do have a look at them all, because they're telling different stages of the story of the hall. Cue in Andrew, who's now going to tell you a little bit about the history of the hall.
Okay, well, I've got 5 minutes, I'm told.
Yeah.
Peter's going to grab me by the neck if I exceed that 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So, you can just about see Hough End Hall. Over there, there's a bit of a chimney pointing out. But of course, back in the 1590s, when the Mosleys built it, they had a wonderful panoramic view all the way across here, which would have been fields. And I really like the idea of these boards, partly because I don't think enough people know about the history of Hough End Hall, but particularly not just the early period when it was built by Sir Nicholas, but the subsequent period, because it was only really the home of the Mosleys for about 200 years. Now that may seem a lot to most people here, but for me and Philip, who are historians, it's a mere blink. For the next 250 years, it was the farmhouse. And the families that ran the farm, they paid their rents to the Edgertons, who had bought Hough End Hall in the 1750s. And they farmed over 250 acres, mainly in that direction. Because, of course, Withington, Hough End Hall was in Withington, not in Chorlton. So for 250 years, it's a farmhouse. The last of the family dies out in 1940, and that's when the Bailey family, who had a farm just on Sandy Lane there, but previous to that had farmed on Beach Road for 200 odd years, they got the right to use the house and the surrounding land, by which time it was down to 3 acres. And then sometime in the 1960s, the last of the Edgertons died out, and the Baileys bought the hall and the surrounding land. There wasn't much they could do with it, and eventually they sold it on to a developer, and that's when you get the picturesque buildings that now obscure Hough End Hall. But we're still very lucky to have kept Hough End Hall, because in the early 1920s, the City Council thought of knocking it down as they cut. Thank you. See, I knew that, didn't it? Norwich Road West, and there was a point when it was nearly knocked down. It was saved, but still they then had the embarrassment of what to do with it. And there were a series of ideas, one of which was a cultural centre, which resurfaced on a number of occasions. And the then Moseley family offered up some of the original furniture if it had actually opened up. Now it would have been interesting because the chap that was then head of the Moseley family was Sir Oswald Moseley, he of the British Union of Fascists. So anyway, that's roughly the story of Hough End Hall. After the Baileys had sold it on, it had a limbo period and then became a restaurant. And there will be people here with very fond memories of times, I won't say drunken times, but certainly happy times in celebratory. Although quite a lot of the trade that they did was for funerals. But people will have fond memories of the time when it was a restaurant and a bar. And then finally, just before it got taken over by a developer and it was virtually derelict, young gangs of kids got into it and played in there. And on the boards that you'll see here, and certainly in the book that costs £5 on sale there, which is the genius of Peter and I, in there are a series of photographs that were taken by Roger Shelley sometime in the mid-1960s, and they show these gangs of kids hanging off the rafters, walking along the tightrope at the top, and it's now 5 minutes, so I've finished.
The pictures.
Oh, right, yeah, sorry.
If you want to point it out,
unbeknown to me, there. And the point is, I used some of those photographs in advance of the book in my blog, and people started saying, I know that lad. I went to school with him, or I played with him. And then inevitably, the time came when somebody said, that's me. And so, to me, that really makes Hough End Hall very special, because although it starts off as the home of an extremely wealthy Lancashire merchant who did well under Queen Elizabeth, and then it was a farm at the heart of the community, it finishes off with people today who still have very fond memories. But I should just finish with this last point. I don't think it's on the boards, but I should tell you, if your fond memories extend to sitting there, eating whatever you were eating and drinking, and looking up at the beams, those great big beams, and thinking how original they are, they aren't. Because when Peter and I got in, well, it would be now about 4 or 5 years ago, and we wandered around and we looked at these beams, and they were actually polystyrene and fabric. That's it, yeah. The real beams are underneath. But nevertheless, you know, it's a lovely story, Hough End Hall, and that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Andrew.
We're really lucky to still have this Elizabethan building in Chorlton, and one of the books that records buildings and their origins and so on, Edna, reckoned that it was a model, a very unusual building, being built of brick, which was unusual at that time, and a particular brick pattern, diamond pattern in the bricks, which was also unusual at that time. So it's been known right back, well, it's been known as something special all over the years. Just one other interesting thing I'll say is that in the Second World War, there was a government-sponsored project to record the face of Britain, and this was in the light of imminent invasion. And they got artists to go around and paint particular buildings, paint landscapes, paint ways of life that captured Britain in the 1930s, early 40s. Hough End Hall was one of the buildings in that series. So it was seen to be as important that if everything was bombed to smithereens, that there was a record that Hough End Hall existed. So we really are very lucky. So now to the great unveiling. So we've asked the Joanna Midgely, who's one of the councillors from Chorlton Park, who was one of the councillors when we started in 2011-12, and all of the councillors at that time. This bishop of, was this in Whalley Range? I can't remember. The Whalley Range councillors were involved, the Chorlton Park council involved, and everyone was really supportive. So, Joanna, would you like to come and cut the ribbon?
I'm going to bring my 2 new friends.
Oh, yes, collectively.
2 new friends.
And this is David, just drawn out a short count.
Yeah. I mean, you've just found him walking along the street.
As usual, lots of other people do the hard work and we still ribbon and get a photo. So thank you to the Friends of the Friend Group who've done a fantastic job and let these display boards are really a great addition to the park so people can learn about the history of the hall. So thank you very much to everybody. And
Just pretend to click it.
Look at the camera.
they'll teach us this at
First the camera, sorry, what was that?
They should teach us this at council school.
Okay,
Ready?